Eric Bischoff has been called pro wrestling's most hated man. Though industry critics have scorned his spectacular rise and fall at World Championship Wrestling, Bischoff's influence in the mid to late 90s still resonates. The Monday Night Wars brought millions of new audience members to televised wrestling, and saw Vince McMahon's WWF removed from atop the wrestling mountain for 83 consecutive weeks, a feat that's unlikely to ever be repeated. So exactly how did Bischoff create a product that not only rivaled, but surpassed the sports entertainment juggernaut that is the WWE? Welcome back to One Full Theory. In today's video, we're going to be looking back at Bischoff's 2006 autobiography, Controversary Creates Cash, to see how Bischoff recalls designing Monday Night Nitro to change wrestling forever. Stick around until the end of the passage to discuss Nitro and the impact of the Monday Night Wars. I grabbed all my department heads and said, "We're going to do this. We have a blank slate. How do we want to paint this picture?" We spent days bouncing around ideas. I listened more than I talked. I really wanted to hear what everyone was thinking. Brad and I discussed doing some research to get an idea of what some of the audience was thinking. I'd worked with researchers before, and quite frankly, I found it to be pretty unproductive. The old saying that numbers lie and liars use numbers is even more true when it comes to research for television shows. Questions can be asked and research framed in a way that you can get any outcome you want, just as I'd done for the Disney executives. But Turner Broadcasting had an unusually talented research guy. He asked me about my goals for the show and what I wanted to find out. Then he came up with an approach to get into the audience's head in a way no researcher previously had. His idea was to create an equal balance of pro-WCW viewers and pro-WWE viewers, and mix in a certain percentage of non-wrestling fans, as well as people who used to watch but didn't any longer. His only agenda was to try and help. I've never believed that research is going to give you a blueprint or a formula to make you successful. Too many people in the entertainment business have no real instinct for the business. They aren't creative people and don't really relate to the creative process. They are ad sales people, or business affairs people, or marketing people. They look at research more to provide an excuse or a safety net if a decision goes bad than as a tool to be used in combination with a truly creative process. But I do believe that if you look at that research and apply it against what your instincts tell you, it can be very helpful. And that's what we did. The research dug below the surface. It was more about the psychology of why people enjoy wrestling than about any one performer. The questions were things like, what do you like about professional wrestling? The answer, I like it when it's unpredictable. Unpredictable and spontaneous popped up over and over. People like surprises, especially in wrestling. This may seem obvious now, but believe me, it wasn't then. After about 3 weeks, our creative discussions became unproductive. We started going in circles. There was no disagreement, but there wasn't much agreement either. So I went off by myself for a couple of days to think about the new show. When I came back, I told my staff, here's what we're going to do. We have 3 choices. Be better than them, less than them, or different than them. We can't be better than them. They've been around longer, they have a lock on the audience, and are good at what they do. We don't want to be less than them, so we have to be different than them. Everybody looked at me like, are you high or what? What does that even mean? At the time, WWE billed itself as a leader in family entertainment. I didn't think we could beat them at that. If we tried to be better than what they did, we'd need to knock things out of the park or be a miserable failure. On the other hand, if we admitted that we weren't as good as them, we'd be losers from the start. Neither approach seemed very inviting. Here's how we're going to be different than them. Their show is taped. How can we be different than that? We go live. I'd known early on that I wanted to do the show live, though I waited until the time was right to tell everyone. I worried it would crack a lot of people on the production side who were uneasy enough as it was. I've always thought that something on live TV is more interesting than the same thing taped. It's hard for performers to be spontaneous when they're being taped. We'd also have trouble achieving the unpredictability and spontaneity that kept jumping out at me from the research on a tape show. Since by the time we aired, word of what had happened would have gotten out. Alright, that's one, I said. Here's another. Who's their audience? Who are they catering to? Their core viewers were kids. If you looked at their demographic at the time, That was their model. I didn't think we could go after the same audience and be better than them at doing it. So what were our options? If their audience are kids 11 to 17, we go after 18 to 39-year-old males. Let's make that our target. Some heads in the room started to nod. How do their storylines play out? What are their characters like? WWE characters were over the top, basically live-action cartoons in animated storylines. Our storylines will be more reality-based, I said. We'll create stories that are more real to the 18 to 39 demo. I wasn't suggesting that all of our characters make this radical shift, but I did want things that focus our stories on an older demo. The list got to be very long, but those were the key elements, and Nitro took shape from that. Pro wrestling philosophy dictated at the time that you had to cram the product down the audience's throat. Promote, promote, promote. Tune in next week to see this. Call your local cable company and order this. Go to your local Ticketmaster and get tickets now. That's always bothered me. As a viewer, I hate listening to it. As a talent, I hated doing it. So I decided I was going to strictly limit the promos on the live show. I wasn't going to tell you this week what was going to be on next week. You want to know? You'll have to tune in to find out. That was a real departure. People just couldn't imagine why I wouldn't hype the next week's show. How can you produce a wrestling show and not promote next week's main event match? When you look at a lot of successful television programs, you realize that they get you to come back not by telling you what's going to happen the following week, but by making you want to find out what's going to happen the following week. You follow the characters, you get hooked on the story. Every successful television series, whether it's a sitcom or a drama or a reality series, works that way. My feeling was, if the show was live, we could create the sense that it was totally unpredictable. We'd create a show where the viewer never knew what was going to happen. If I could achieve that, I wouldn't have to promote what was going to happen next week. Seinfeld didn't. ER didn't. Viewers would tune in to find out. My goal was to create a show that the audience would say, "Shit, I can't believe that they did that. What are they going to do next week?" I knew it would work if I could kick things off right, with the right surprise. Okay, so we're going to press pause there. There is a narrative out there that Bischoff actually physically created this list of things that could be different between Nitro and Raw. You know, he's alluded to the cartoon characters of the WWF. He wanted to create realism, real characters with real names. It even went down to the design of the ring. The WWE used ropes, he used cables. They used giants, he wanted to use athletes. But I do really like this passage because it lands on the biggest point of difference from when the war began, and that was live TV. And although in the long term that unpredictable nature or the crash TV approach of Nitro didn't win the day, the impact that Nitro and Bischoff had on the industry is immeasurable. From the cultural influences that he brought in from Mexico and Japan to the creation of the New World Order, Nitro, much like Bischoff, was unapologetic, and its influence is unmissable almost 30 years later. Now, before you leave, let me know in the comments what you think played the biggest part in Nitro's success. Was it Eric Bischoff himself, the backing of Ted Turner, or the talent that WCW acquired over those years? And do you believe that we will ever see another promotional rivalry on the same scale as Nitro versus Raw? Don't forget to click like and subscribe on your way out, and until next time, this is One Full Theory, where we smarten up and smack down.